I'm John Batchelor. Malcolm Hoenlein, Conference of Presidents, major American Jewish organizations, continued with me. In all the Ummah, everything's a tribe. There's only one nation, and that's Egypt. It's an old proverb. It sounds much better in Arabic. I can't do that. However, that nation is days away from an election that will change the formula for the Middle East. The 1979 peace treaty between Egypt and Israel is the foundation for peace these last decades. That was disrupted beginning with the turmoil over the exit of President Mubarak and the entrance of a man eventually elected, Mohamed Morsi of the Muslim Brothers. Last summer, you all recall, General al-Sisi took to the television and, following the demands of millions of Egyptians in Tahrir Square and throughout the country, General al-Sisi established a new government, but without an election. And that election is days away. And we're very pleased to welcome the ambassador from Egypt to the United States, Mohamed Tawfik. Mr. Ambassador, a very good evening to you. First, this is a different governance, and it's a governance under pressure now because you're holding an election while there is still upset over the Muslim Brothers and their place in the future. So I'd like you to recommend to my audience, it's a sophisticated audience that understands that elections are critical times for countries, how to watch the reporting from Cairo and the rest of Egypt next Monday the 26th and Tuesday the 27th. What to watch for? Good evening, Mr. Ambassador.
Good evening. It's a great pleasure to be with you. As to your question, I will just briefly tell you about my experiences over last weekend when we had the elections here for the expatriates. And so we had the elections at the Egyptian embassy. And it was astonishing. We had people who drove all the way from Florida just so they could vote. And we got about 5 times the number of people that you'd expect on these kinds of elections. And the street outside the embassy was full of people waving flags, dancing, playing music. There was a lot of optimism in the air. So my advice regarding how to follow and understand what's going on in Egypt in the forthcoming election, which will start on the 26th and the 27th, is to look at how people are reacting to that, how many people are going to vote, whether people are in a festive mood or not, whether people are optimistic or not. The general mood is very, very, very important. And I think that if we look at the stock market today, it's doing fantastically well. So it shows that there's a general spirit of optimism, at least among investors.
You have had a distinguished diplomatic career and now serving as ambassador to the United States, which is a top position in the Egyptian Foreign Service. How do you assess now U.S.-Egyptian relationships? We've seen some ups and downs recently. How do you think how would you rate it today?
I think we're at a stage in which we are, on both sides, very keen on rebuilding the relations in a way that will be more understood by both our publics. It's not enough now to have relations just between the two governments. You really need to get both peoples involved. And I am confident that once we can go through this process, we will have much stronger and more solid relations than ever before. Now, this doesn't mean we will agree on everything. There will be issues on which we will disagree, but it means that we will have the confidence to move forward together.
One of the areas that United States, Egypt, Israel share common concern, and which there's been a lot of cooperation, is the Sinai and the presence there of many terrorist organizations and the need to support the efforts. How would you assess today the situation in Sinai? Does Egypt have the necessary equipment to be able to carry out the activities to try and contain at least these terrorist entities?
Well, I think there has been a very vigorous effort to deal with the terrorists and extremists in the Sinai. This is something that cannot be allowed to continue. We cannot allow any part of Egypt to become a safe haven for terrorists. That would be against our principles and against our interests. It would be harmful to the whole region. So this is something that we are resolved to bring under control and to deal with. Regarding equipment, of course, there's always a need for equipment, and recently there has been a decision by the administration to release Apache helicopters that are very useful in this kind of combat against terrorists in the Sinai, and we look forward to that process taking place as soon as possible.
I want to underline this. This is remarks by General Martin Dempsey, chairman of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, within these last days. I think the military-to-military relationship with Egypt should largely be defined by our common interests. We have a lot of common interests, in particular in countering terror. That would include Sinai.
Absolutely.
But also, Mr. Ambassador, the peace process in 1979 is continued stable through all of the turmoil of these last years. It's hard to see that as a positive because nothing went wrong. However, I want you to help the American people understand what the 1979 peace treaty means to Egypt today.
I think the peace treaty between Egypt and Israel is a fact of life. It is something that is no longer basically argued upon. And this is the important thing. The important thing is to reach a point where you are acting in the whole region in order to achieve a comprehensive peace. So you don't just... First of all, you have to respect the peace treaty with Israel, which we have done on both sides for the past decades. But at the same time, you have to look at it as one of the building blocks, together with the peace treaty between Israel and Jordan, towards a more comprehensive peace that will really help the entire region to live in peace, and also will help the Palestinians to feel that they have their own state, their own entity. And I think in general, we can work as a region towards having a win-win situation in the Middle East.
But key to it, I think, would be the economy of Egypt. And you have such a growing population living on 6% of the land. And I know that General Sisi has talked about trying to get all the people to live on all of the land.
Just 30 seconds, Malcolm.
Do we see a real turnaround in the short run in terms of the economic conditions?
30 seconds, Mr. Ambassador.
Well, as I said before, there's a lot of optimism among business community, both in Egypt. Here in the United States, businesses who work in Egypt are very optimistic. There's no doubt that we have a very good future for the Egyptian economy, for the Egyptian people, because the Egyptian people feel empowered. They are in the driver's seat. And with that kind of spirit, we can't go wrong.
His Excellency Ambassador Mohamed M. Tawfik, Ambassador of the Arab Republic of Egypt to the United States of America, within days of the important vote, 26 and 27. Malcolm Hoenlein, I'm John Batchelor.